However, my story is very different than everybody else's. I did a wrestling tryout at the Staples Center on August. It was the day after SummerSlam 2010.
Okay.
So whatever day that was, it was a Raw, and then we got there like around maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. We did a full on like wrestling tryout for a couple hours, and they pulled me aside. The guy's name at the time was Ty Bailey. He was the main um, talent agent scout kind of a guy. Either way, back then it was Ty Bailey. And then he approached me afterwards, and he basically gave me the rundown, a bunch of questions asking if I was under contract, if I'd be willing to move to Florida, if given the opportunity. To which eventually that's kind of how it went down. So I started um, because I went into catering that later that day, that Raw, and I was approached later on, and I was asked if I wanted to do ring announcing the following day on SmackDown. I didn't know for what. They just asked me if I was available the next day in Bakersfield, California. To which obviously I said yes. They had asked me if I've ever done ring announcing before, which I never have, but I said yes. They asked me if I had a tuxedo, which I said yes, which I didn't. So I went to the Goodwill that was near my house, and I bought a cheap little suit. And there was a bridal
Wow.
store across the street from that Goodwill, and then I bought some bow ties. So then I went the next day to Bakersfield, which is just some maybe like 2 hours north of Los Angeles. Um, and I did my whole spiel. I did the tryout. They asked me again for the second day in Fresno because they were doing a double taping of SmackDown because the SmackDown guys were going overseas the next week,
Okay.
so they wanted to do a double taping. Um, and then after the second day of SmackDown, they basically offered me a contract, and it was just right from there. That's how it kind of went down. I didn't do developmental first. I just started on the main roster. Um, and then once I officially got my officially after my medical stuff and all that other stuff, which took like 2 3 months. Once I finally got my official contract, I got sent over to Tampa for FCW, and then I started wrestling over there. But at the same time, I was still doing main roster stuff. So I started different than everybody else, and I feel like I got a lot of heat from a lot of guys in developmental because I just came in. I was never there for training, and I was already on the main roster. So it was a little different. So I'm sure I
Yeah.
got a lot of comments that were made here and there.
None to your face, though.
No, of course not. Of
Yeah,
course
of
not.
course. And I think that's a problem with a lot of businesses in general. Obviously, wrestling, I think, is a specialty to it because they'll bring in, like, say, a football player, and a
Mhm.
football player doesn't didn't go on the indies, didn't go to high schools and wrestle in front of 25 people for a hot dog and a handshake. Like
Right, right.
they were brought in because, oh, you were an athlete in the NFL, so we want to try to take your athleticism and turn it into becoming a professional wrestler, and maybe you'll pan out. And obviously that has happened to a lot of people. Baron Corbin and Pat McAfee is doing great for
Hmm.
himself. Goldberg, like it's shown that people have done this, and obviously with you and in bringing you up to be a wrestler, and then on the main roster as well, it's this jealousy,
Yeah,
obviously.
no, yeah, definitely. But
You know,
it wasn't until I got to WWE that I understood that whole process because I used to be like that. I did 4 years on independence before I had my tryout. Um, and I felt the same way. I was like, why are they getting all these models? Why are they getting all these football guys?
mm-hmm.
Why not go and get wrestlers? And it wasn't until I got to there that I understood the reason why. Because it's hard to teach somebody the discipline to work out, to eat right, to if you're already dedicated in a sport, you already have that discipline.
Yep.
Now we just have to teach you wrestling, which is a whole lot easier than teach a wrestler how to be disciplined and eating right and working out and having that mentality. That's a whole lot harder.
Mm.
Um, and I'm definitely guilty of that. Um, so and then also when you come in from the independent, sometimes you already come with a mindset. Your brain is already wired a certain way.
Right.
But if you already come in shape, looking great, and then we just teach you our way, we can mold you how to our desires. So I totally get the whole idea of picking these athletes and then just making them wrestlers. I get that. The one thing that does lack though on that end is the love for the profession.
Yes.
That is where the independent wrestlers have the advantage over the non-wrestling athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They understand it, they love it, they have an appreciation for it. Whereas a lot of these other guys, they probably never will, or they'll never get it. They may be great, they may take great bumps, they'll go through the cycle of it, but they'll never have that appreciation for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the balance of which is better. They both have their pros and cons.